7 months after his wife left him, the most feared mafia boss in New York gets a call. She's in labor with his twins, but she swore she could never have children. Now, as secrets burn and bloodlines collide, Adrian Moretti must face the one war he never won, the one for his family. Stay till the end, because in this story, redemption comes with a body count. Rain hammered the glass like it was trying to get in. Adrian Moretti didn't move. He sat behind a desk that looked carved from shadow, Manhattan bleeding neon beyond the window. A contract lay open in front of him, words swimming like ghosts. He could read every clause, every lie, but none of it mattered. Paper couldn't fill the space Elena had left. 7 months. 7 months since she walked out and took the light with her. The clock on the wall ticked loud enough to drown his heartbeat. Somewhere below, a siren screamed, then vanished into the storm. He poured whiskey he didn't taste. The ice cracked, sharp as memory. He could still see her face the night she left, eyes red, voice steady. "You destroy everything you touch, Adrian, even me." He'd let her go because love was supposed to mean mercy. He'd told himself she was safer without him, but every night since, he'd felt the lie in his bones. The city blinked at him through the rain, cold, merciless, alive. His empire was intact. His soul wasn't. The phone rang. Once, twice. He almost ignored it. Then habit won. Power had taught him never to let a call ring 3 times. He picked up. "Moretti!" Static hissed. A woman's voice, thin and shaking, slipped through. "Mr. Moretti, this is St. Clair Hospital." His hand froze on the receiver. Hospitals meant weakness, and weakness got people killed. "What do you want?" "Sir." She hesitated. "Your ex-wife, Elena Carter. She's in labor." The world stopped moving. The rain, the clock, the siren in his head, everything froze. "She's what?" "In labor, sir." The nurse's voice broke like glass. "With your twins." The words hit harder than a bullet. For a second, he forgot how to breathe. Elena. Twins. No. Impossible. She'd told him she couldn't have children. He remembered that night too well. Her shaking hands, the tears she tried to hide, his own useless promise that it didn't matter. He stood, chair scraping across marble. "Repeat that." "She's in labor, Mr. Moretti. The rest drowned under the crash of thunder outside. He looked down. His fist was bleeding. He hadn't noticed he'd crushed the glass in his hand. Crimson dripped onto the contract, staining the signatures of men who feared him. Blood mixed with the rain running down the window, as if the sky itself bled for him. "Tell me she's alive," he whispered, static again. Then the nurse's voice, quieter, as if someone had taken the phone from her. "That depends." A male voice now, muffled, unfamiliar. "On how fast you get here." Click. Silence. The line went dead. Adrian stared at the receiver, his reflection warped in the cracked window. Then he moved, fast, deliberate, the way men move when there's no choice left but action. Adrian shoved the receiver back into place and reached for his coat. The black wool slid over his shoulders like armor. Outside, lightning split the skyline in half. He didn't feel the cold. He didn't feel the blood drying on his knuckles. He only felt the echo of that voice. "Your ex-wife. She's in labor." The elevator doors opened. 2 bodyguards waited, eyes wide. "Boss?" "Car. Now." They fell in behind him without another word. Men who'd seen him level rivals with a look suddenly stepped aside. Down the marble hall. The city's hum pressed against the glass. Every reflection stared back at him. A man built from violence, from power, from losses he'd stopped counting. But tonight the empire meant nothing. Only the hospital. Only Elena. The elevator plunged 40 floors in silence. His heartbeat filled the steel box like a drumbeat to war. The doors slid open to rain-drowned chaos. engines idling, headlights slicing through mist. Adrian slid into the back seat of the black Mercedes. "St. Clair Hospital," he said. The driver hit the gas. The city blurred. Wet asphalt, flashing red lights, puddles reflecting the underworld he ruled. Adrian pressed a blood-stained hand to his temple. Twins. He didn't know whether to believe or destroy whoever said it. Elena had sworn she couldn't have children. 7 months since she'd left. 7 months of silence, of wondering if she hated him or still dreamed about him. Now she was in labor, with his twins. His chest tightened. He forced his breathing to stay steady. Emotions got men killed, but tonight, emotion was all he had left. He replayed her last words in his mind, each one cutting deeper. "You don't protect Adrian. You cage." Maybe she was right. Maybe he'd built his empire just to hide the fact that he didn't know how to love without breaking things. The car skidded around a corner, tires hissing through the floodwater. A red light blurred past, horns screaming in protest. "Faster," Adrian said. The driver didn't argue. No one ever did. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Static. Breathing. Then silence. He ended the call, eyes narrowing. Someone knew. Someone was playing him. He turned to his bodyguard in the front seat. "Trace that call." "Yes, boss." Rain lashed harder. The skyline flickered. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw movement in the reflection of the window. A camera flashed somewhere behind them. Then it was gone. He leaned forward. "Check the mirrors." "Nothing, boss." Still, he felt it. Eyes on him, like the whole city was watching a man about to fall. Minutes stretched into miles when the hospital finally appeared through the downpour. A tower of glass and emergency lights. Adrian's pulse quickened. He stepped out before the car stopped moving, boots splashing in the flood. Rain soaked his suit instantly, but he didn't care. He pushed through the sliding doors. White light hit him like a confession. Nurses froze mid-stride. Security guards recognized him too late. The infamous Moretti had come to the one place that survived on mercy. "Where is she?" he demanded. No one answered. Eyes darted, whispers spread. His name traveled faster than the storm outside. He grabbed the nearest nurse gently but firmly. "Elena Carter, room..." Her lips trembled. "Second floor, maternity..." But he was already moving. Each step echoed like thunder. The corridor stretched forever. Antiseptic, humming lights, the smell of fear. He turned the corner. A door at the end stood open, lights spilling out. Adrian slowed. His chest ached with a feeling he didn't want to name. He stepped inside. Empty bed. Sheets twisted, still warm. A nurse rushed past him carrying a chart, stopped when she saw him. She was just here," she stammered. "They moved her to delivery. Twins coming fast." Adrian exhaled, a sound caught between relief and terror. He moved toward the next hall, but a security guard blocked his way. "Sir, you can't..." Adrian's stare silenced him. The guard stepped aside. Another corridor, another flash of lightning through the window. Then, a voice behind him. "Mr. Moretti." He turned. A young doctor stood there, eyes wide, hands trembling. "She's alive," the doctor said, "but her blood pressure's unstable. We're doing everything we can." Adrian's throat tightened. For a moment, words failed him. He nodded once. "Take care of her, whatever it costs." He looked toward the delivery doors. He could almost hear her breathing on the other side. The woman who'd both saved and destroyed H. He leaned against the wall, rainwater dripping from his hair. His hand brushed the small cut on his palm where glass had sliced him. A reminder that love always came with blood. The hallway phone buzzed. A nurse picked it up, listened, then frowned and handed the receiver to him. "Mr. Moretti, call for you." He pressed the receiver to his ear. "Who is this?" The voice on the other end was muffled, distorted. Male, calm, deliberate. "Running through storms suits you, doesn't it, Adrian?" His muscles tensed. "Who is this?" "You'll find out soon enough." "Where's Elena?" A pause. Then the voice dropped to a whisper. That depends on how fast you get here. Click. The line went dead. Adrian lowered the phone slowly. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, once, twice, before steadying again. He looked at the double doors leading to the delivery room. His reflection stared back, a man of power soaked in rain, standing on the edge between redemption and ruin. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. He turned toward his men. Find out who made that call, he said, voice flat, deadly calm, and keep the car running. The storm outside roared louder. Adrian glanced once more at the delivery doors, the place where life began and history ended, and walked away, coat trailing like a shadow. The camera followed him down the white corridor, catching the smear of blood he left on the wall. Through the static hum of hospital machines, one sound cut through, a newborn's cry, but Adrian didn't hear it. He was already gone. The payphone behind him rang again, the same number flashing on its cracked screen, and a whisper slid through the receiver into the empty hall. You're already too late, Moretti. Rain followed him inside, dripping from the edge of his coat, marking the hospital tiles like a trail of war. Every footstep echoed, every stair dropped. Adrian Moretti didn't belong in places built to heal. He was a man who broke things. Two of his guards moved ahead, parting the crowd. Move, one barked. White coats scattered. Someone whispered his name, half curse, half prayer. Fluorescent light flickered over his face, catching the cut on his hand, the dried blood along his wrist. He looked like a man carved out of the storm. Room 217, a trembling nurse muttered. She didn't meet his eyes. Adrian walked faster. His heartbeat was a gunfire rhythm, steady, dangerous, unstoppable. He shoved open the door. The room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Machines beeped in quiet defiance. Elena lay on the bed, pale against the white sheets, hair damp with sweat. Tubes and wires traced across her skin. She looked nothing like the woman who used to challenge him, who used to look at him like he was worth saving. For a moment, the noise around him faded. He took a single step closer. Beside her bed, two incubators glowed under soft light. Inside, tiny, fragile, breathing miracles. A boy, a girl. Adrian's throat tightened. He pressed a hand to the glass. The warmth of the incubator bled through, grounding him. He caught his reflection in the plexiglass, cold eyes, bruised soul. The stranger staring back had no idea how to hold innocence without staining it. He whispered, "Mine." The word sounded foreign, almost a confession. Behind him, the doctors pretended to busy themselves with charts. No one wanted his attention. No one wanted to be the one to speak. Then someone did. A young nurse, barely more than 20, voice trembling but honest. She didn't list you as the father. The words sliced through the quiet. Adrian turned slowly, his gaze locked on hers. Say that again. She didn't list you, the nurse stammered. The forms, they're blank. He stared at her for a heartbeat too long. The air thickened. His men shifted, waiting for the order that would never come. Finally, he exhaled through his nose. And who else would she trust? No one answered. A drop of rain slid from his hairline to his jaw. He didn't move. He looked back at Elena. The rise and fall of her chest, shallow, fragile. He'd seen death 100 times, delivered it himself. But this was the only sight that ever terrified him. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. His voice softened to something almost human. You still find ways to hurt me, don't you? The monitor beside her beeped faster for a second, as if answering. One of the doctors cleared his throat. Sir, she lost a lot of blood. She needs rest. I suggest... Adrian's glare cut him off. You suggest nothing. You keep her alive. The doctor nodded quickly and left. The twins stirred in their incubators, small fists curling in sleep. Adrian watched them, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. Tell the men outside to lock down this floor, he said without turning. Yes, boss. Doors shut. The hallway fell silent again, except for rain beating the windows and the hum of machines. Adrian moved to the window, looking out at the city, his city. For the first time, it felt small. He pulled out his phone. "Vincent," he said when the line connected, "get the best security detail you can find. No one gets near this room without my say-so." A pause. Vincent's voice crackled back, cautious. "Understood. Should I assume we're expecting trouble?" Adrian's gaze dropped to the twins. Trouble's already here. He hung up and slid the phone back into his pocket. The nurse from before lingered near the doorway, trying to blend into the wall. Adrian noticed her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Grace." "Grace," he repeated quietly. "You're staying with her. You don't leave that bedside." Her throat bobbed. "Yes, sir." He nodded once, then turned back toward Elena. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Something in the corner of the room. He froze. Reflected in the monitor's glass was a faint red light. A camera. Somewhere in the shadows behind the curtain. He moved fast, pulling it down, finding a small, professional-grade lens fixed into the vent above the window. His jaw tightened. He crushed the device in his fist, wires snapping. Then he heard it. Click. Another flash. He spun toward the door, but no one was there. Only the faint smell of rain and the echo of footsteps fading down the hall. Adrian crossed to the hallway. "Lock every exit," he told his men. "Nobody leaves. Nobody comes in." "Yes, boss." Boots pounded off in both directions. The air in the corridor turned heavy, thick with the kind of silence that lives right before something breaks. He walked back into the room, eyes scanning corners, ceiling vents, power outlets. Every shadow felt wrong. Grace stood frozen by Elena's bed. "Mr. Moretti, what's happening?" "Someone's been watching." She swallowed hard, hugging the chart to her chest. Adrian opened the closet, the drawers, under the bed. Nothing. But the feeling didn't fade. He'd lived too long in a world where paranoia wasn't a symptom. It was survival. He stepped to the window again. Across the street, in a building half hidden by rain, a single light blinked on. He raised his hand slightly. The light blinked off. His pulse steadied into a cold, familiar rhythm. This wasn't an accident. "Vincent," he said into the phone, "who's on surveillance detail tonight?" "Two of our own. Stationed outside. Check them. Personally." A pause. "Right now?" "Now." He ended the call and turned back to Elena. Her breathing was slow, shallow, but there, proof that life could still exist inside the chaos he'd built. For a moment, he let the sound of the monitor steady him. The twins stirred in their glass boxes, soft, small movements that felt louder than the storm outside. Adrian pressed his palm against the incubator again. He'd made promises once, that he'd never let the world touch her, that nothing would reach her through him. He'd failed then. He wouldn't fail again. The door opened. Vincent entered, wet from the rain. "They're gone," he said. "Both men. Their comms are dead." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Find them." "We're searching, but—" Adrian cut him off with a glance. "Find them." Vincent nodded and disappeared down the corridor. The overhead lights flickered. The machines beeped, once, twice, then steadied. Adrian's reflection rippled in the glass. Half man, half storm. He turned to Grace. "If anything changes, if she wakes, you call me first." She nodded quickly. Adrian stepped out into the hall. The air smelled of metal and disinfectant. He passed rooms where strangers whispered over their loved ones, unaware that the devil himself was walking past their doors. At the nurse's station, a clerk looked up, startled. Adrian stopped in front of her. "Security footage. I want every camera from the last 2 hours." Her fingers shook as she keyed the command. Yes, sir." Minutes later, the monitor filled with grayscale images, patients, orderlies, the storm outside. Then a frame froze, a figure in a dark coat, face hidden by the brim of a hat, holding a camera, the timestamp, 5 minutes before he entered Elena's room. Adrian leaned closer. Zoom. Pixels thickened, the outline stayed faceless, but a detail stood out. A ring, silver, engraved with an insignia he knew too well. Marcus Vance. The name hit like a blade between ribs. Marcus had been dead for years, or so Adrian thought. He exhaled slowly, the sound almost a growl. The nurse at the desk whispered, "Should I call security?" "No," he said. "I'll handle it." He turned and walked back down the corridor, the storm's pulse echoing through the windows. He felt the weight of the world he'd built pressing on him, threatening to crack. When he reached Elena's door, he paused. Through the small glass window, he saw her still, pale, the machine steady, and then behind her reflection in the glass, a movement. A shadow crossed the far corner of the room, where no one stood. He pushed the door open. Nothing. Only the hiss of oxygen, the soft hum of the incubators. He closed the door again, eyes narrowing. The hall lights dimmed for half a second, just long enough for the monitors to flash white, and in that flicker, across the opposite wall, a new red dot glowed. Another camera. He moved toward it, but before he reached the wall, the dot vanished. Then the phone in his pocket buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. No voice, only the faint click of a shutter. Then static. He lowered the phone slowly. Every instinct screamed that he was no longer the hunter. He walked to the window. Across the street, that same building's light blinked twice. Deliberate, mocking. He stayed there, watching until the light turned off completely. Behind him, Elena stirred, murmured his name once, barely audible. He turned back, hope and fear colliding in his chest. But she was still unconscious. He took a step toward her bed, then froze. A small envelope had been placed beside the incubators. He hadn't seen it before. He picked it up. No markings, only a single line written across the front in neat, deliberate handwriting. You're not the only one watching. Lightning flashed. The windows shook. Somewhere deep in the hospital, an alarm began to sound. Adrian looked down the hall. Lights dying one by one, leaving the corridor in shadow. He turned back toward the twins. The monitors above them blinked red. Then a soft metallic click echoed from the vent behind him, the unmistakable sound of a camera lens retracting. Adrian spun toward the sound, but the room was empty. Only the rain answered. He looked back at the envelope in his hand and saw his own reflection on the incubator glass, framed perfectly in a sniper's targeting reticle. Cut to black. The storm outside had faded to a cold drizzle by the time Adrian returned to his penthouse. The city lights spread beneath him like a living circuit, money, fear, and secrets pulsing through every street. He didn't turn on the main lights. The skyline was enough to illuminate the room. Shadows clung to the marble floors, moving when he moved. He dropped his coat on the sofa and stood for a long moment in front of the glass wall, staring at his reflection. The man looking back was polished and lethal, but hollow behind the eyes. For years, that reflection had meant control. Tonight, it looked like evidence. His phone vibrated on the table. Vincent's voice came through, tense and clipped. "We pulled the hospital feeds, boss. You'll want to see this yourself." Adrian ended the call and crossed to the security console built into the wall. A row of monitors flickered to life, throwing pale light over his face. Files loaded, camera angles from every hallway, time-stamped, silent except for the hum of static. He leaned forward, scrolling through footage, corridors filled with nurses, the mechanical rhythm of a hospital at midnight. Then the moment he entered Elena's room, his men at his back, his own expression unreadable. He fast-forwarded until the image blurred, then stopped when a motion alert flashed in red. Camera 12, roof access. He keyed it open. A figure stepped into the frame, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a rain-soaked coat. The face was half hidden, but when the intruder turned toward the light, something familiar flashed, a silver ring engraved with an insignia of two crossed wolves. Adrian froze. The symbol hadn't been seen in 7 years. It had belonged to one man, Marcus Vance. He replayed the footage 3 times looking for a mistake. None. The same way of moving, efficient, confident, dangerous. The man had been declared dead after a warehouse fire that Adrian himself had ordered sealed. So how was he walking across the hospital roof? Adrian's jaw clenched. He called Vincent back. "Tell me everything you know about the hospital security detail." "We're checking." "Not checking. Knowing." Vincent hesitated, then said, "The guard on the north entrance used to work for Vance Enterprises. Before, you know." Adrian closed his eyes for half a second. Of course. The past had a way of leaving roots in the places you least expected. He disconnected without another word. For a long moment he stood there, hands on the edge of the console, head bowed. The quiet tick of the antique clock filled the penthouse. In his mind, images collided. Elena pale on the hospital bed, the twins breathing in glass boxes, and Marcus Vance watching from the shadows. Once Marcus had been the closest thing Adrian had to a brother. They had built an empire together. Adrian's ruthlessness and Marcus's charm, 2 halves of the same weapon. Then came Elena. She had walked into their world and, without meaning to, split it in 2. Adrian remembered the first time he saw her laugh at one of Marcus's jokes. It was small, harmless, but it had burned into him like a mark he could never erase. The partnership didn't survive long after that. He opened the next file. It showed Marcus turning from the roof camera toward a second lens, looking directly into it, as though he knew Adrian would be watching later. Then the man raised a hand in a slow, deliberate salute before the feed cut to black. Adrian's fingers tightened on the console. The old burn of betrayal rose in his chest, familiar and poisonous. He moved to the bar, poured whiskey, and didn't drink it. The glass sat untouched, trembling slightly in his grip. Why now? After all these years, why come back? And why her? The elevator behind him chimed softly. Vincent stepped out, rein still clinging to his shoulders. "We checked the staff logs. Marcus Vance's name doesn't appear, but a technician signed in under an alias tied to one of his shell companies." Adrian turned, eyes narrowing. "So he's been preparing this. Looks that way. He wanted you to see him." Adrian looked out the window again. The city spread before him like a chessboard missing half its pieces. "He's playing the long game," he said quietly. Vincent hesitated. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing yet. If he's back, he'll come closer." He waited until Vincent left, then sat at his desk. The monitor still glowed faintly, showing the frozen image of Marcus on the rooftop. The rain had streaked across the lens, blurring the edges of his face. But the smirk, that same confident smirk, was unmistakable. Adrian reached for the keyboard to shut the feed down, but another window opened on its own. A black screen. Then white letters began to appear, one by one, typed remotely. "You were never the only one she loved." He stared at the words. The cursor blinked at the end of the sentence, waiting. For a heartbeat, he couldn't move. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. He thought of Elena's hand slipping from his the night she left, of the look she gave him, a mixture of sorrow and something he had mistaken for fear. He deleted the message. It reappeared instantly. She chose, "You just weren't listening." Adrian's pulse hammered. He yanked the connection cable from the terminal. The screen stayed lit. "Hello, old friend." Then the feed died, leaving only his own reflection in the black glass. Thunder rolled in the distance, though the storm had already passed. He turned the monitor off, poured the whiskey into the sink, and let the sound of the liquid vanish down the drain. When he lifted his gaze, the city looked different. Same skyline, same towers, but each window now felt like an eye staring back. He walked to the window and touched the cold glass. "If you're out there, Marcus," he muttered, "come find me." A movement caught his attention far below. A dark sedan idled at the curb outside his building, headlights off. He narrowed his eyes. A phone inside his jacket buzzed, a new text from an unknown number. Step away from the window. He didn't move. Another message followed. This isn't over her. It's over them. Adrian's gaze dropped to the street again. The car pulled out slowly into traffic and disappeared under the dripping lights. He stood motionless for a long time, the echo of the message lingering in his chest. Them. The twins. He turned back toward the console, but the screens had already rebooted. Every feed displayed the same frozen image. Marcus Vance's face, half in shadow, smiling directly at him. The words, "Signal lost," blinked underneath. And then, another sound, faint but distinct, a soft knock echoing from somewhere inside the penthouse. He drew a breath, every muscle locked. The knock came again, closer this time. He turned toward the hallway. The light there flickered once. On the floor just beyond the threshold, a single envelope waited. White, damp from rain, marked with the same insignia of crossed wolves. Adrian bent, picked it up, and broke the seal. Inside was a single photograph. Elena, asleep in her hospital bed, the twins beside her, and a figure standing at the window, camera in hand, written across the bottom in neat black ink. "Welcome back to the game." Adrian looked up from the photo. In the dark glass of the window behind him, another reflection appeared, a man's silhouette wearing a silver ring. The screen cut to black. The convoy cut through the night like a blade through water. No sirens, no lights. Just the deep growl of engines slicing through the silence between Manhattan and the coast. Adrian sat in the back seat, the city shrinking behind him. The driver kept glancing at him in the mirror but said nothing. He didn't need to. The air in the car felt heavier than smoke. Next to him, Elena lay against the seat, half awake, her skin still pale from the hospital lights. The twins were in a carrier beside her, two small bundles wrapped in white, breathing softly as the world shifted around them. Adrian's gaze stayed fixed on them. His empire had never made him nervous. But this tiny sound of life, unraveled something inside him he didn't know still existed. They reached the estate before dawn. The mansion loomed like a fortress against the line of trees, its windows dark, its walls thick enough to keep the world out or in. As the gates closed behind them, Adrian's men fanned out across the property. Every motion was calculated, every shadow accounted for. The air smelled of wet pine and cold stone. Elena stirred when the car stopped. Her eyes opened slowly, confusion flickering before recognition hit. "Where are we?" Her voice was soft, raw from exhaustion. "Safe," Adrian said simply, stepping out and opening her door. She looked past him at the tall iron gates, the guards, the cameras mounted along the eaves. "Safe," she repeated, "or trapped." He didn't answer. Inside, the house was silent except for the ticking of an old grandfather clock. The walls were lined with old paintings, faces of strangers who once owned the place, now reduced to ghosts behind glass. Adrian led her upstairs to a room that overlooked the gardens. The curtains were drawn tight. The air smelled faintly of lavender and dust. A nurse waited quietly near the crib already set up in the corner. Elena stopped in the doorway. "You planned this." "I plan everything," he said. Her eyes hardened. "Even my freedom." Adrian didn't respond. He simply turned to the nurse and said, "Make sure they're fed. Then you can rest." When the nurse left, silence filled the room again. Elena stood by the window, her reflection faint in the glass. "I told you I didn't want your protection," she said. He turned slowly toward her. "You think this is about what you want?" Her gaze cut through him. "That's always been the problem, hasn't it?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They have my name, Elena. That makes them targets. That makes you one, too." Her hand trembled, though her voice didn't. I'm not afraid of your enemies, Adrian. I'm afraid of becoming one of them. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain began again outside, pattering softly against the window pane. He wanted to say something, anything, but words had never been his weapon of choice. Instead, he adjusted the curtain, ensuring no light spilled out. "I'll have Vincent post men at every entrance," he said finally. "No one gets near this place." She gave a hollow laugh. "You really think walls can keep danger out? You're the danger, Adrian." That landed like a knife, but he didn't flinch. He turned toward the door. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we figure out what Marcus wants." She watched him go. "He doesn't want your empire," she murmured when he was gone. "He wants to destroy the part of you that I loved." Downstairs, the control room buzzed with soft chatter. Vincent met Adrian at the monitors, eyes scanning a bank of security feeds. "Everything's sealed, no external signals. We've got motion sensors on the perimeter." "Good," Adrian said. "Double the watch near the nursery." Vincent hesitated. "You think Vance will come here?" Adrian's expression didn't change. "He won't have to. He already has eyes inside." Vincent frowned. "Inside?" Adrian nodded. "That camera at the hospital wasn't luck. Someone tipped him off. Someone close." Vincent's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Hours passed. The storm grew heavier, rattling the shutters. Adrian stayed awake, watching the monitors, replaying every second of the hospital footage in his mind. The image of Marcus's face burned behind his eyes. When dawn bled across the horizon, Adrian stood by the window of the study, a half-finished glass of whiskey in his hand. He hadn't slept. He didn't need to. His mind was running too fast. He thought about Elena's voice, steady, defiant, and the way her eyes had changed since the day she left him. She used to look at him like she saw the man beneath the armor. Now she looked like she was staring at the armor itself. The door creaked softly. Vincent stepped in. "She's awake," he said. Adrian turned. "Elena?" Vincent nodded. "She asked for you." He hesitated. For a man who had faced down entire syndicates, a single woman's words still had the power to unnerve him. He set down the glass and made his way upstairs. The nursery door was slightly open. Sunlight streamed in through the curtains, catching in the fine dust that floated like quiet ghosts. Elena stood by the crib, one hand resting on the edge, the other holding a photo, the same one from the hospital. She didn't turn when he entered. "You think Marcus is after you," she said, "but it's me he wants." Adrian stopped a few feet away. "Why?" She turned then, her expression unreadable. "Because I made a choice once, and it wasn't you." The words hit harder than a bullet. He didn't speak. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If he's alive, it means everything we buried is about to surface. The deals, the names, the blood. You can't fix this with walls and guards." He looked at her, searching for something in her face that still belonged to him. "Then tell me what he wants." "Elena." Her eyes glistened. "Forgiveness." Before he could reply, the lights flickered. A low hum rolled through the walls, followed by the unmistakable sound of static from the intercom. Adrian turned toward the hallway. "Vincent?" No answer. The static grew louder, then cleared. A voice came through, distorted, mechanical. "You built your fortress on ashes, Moretti. Let's see how well it burns." Adrian froze. Elena clutched the crib instinctively. Then, from somewhere deep below the mansion, a dull thud. The floor vibrated beneath their feet. "Get down!" Adrian pulled Elena toward the corner as the windows shattered inward, light and heat exploding through the room. The sound was deafening. Glass, fire, the cry of alarms. Smoke rolled in like a wave. Adrian shielded her, coughing through the haze. "The twins!" She turned. Eyes wide, but the nursery was already engulfed in smoke. Flames licked up the walls, consuming everything in their path. He rushed forward, ignoring the pain slicing through his lungs, the crackle of fire overhead. He reached the crib, empty. "Elena!" he shouted, but she was already by his side, choking, eyes wide with terror. The monitors downstairs were dead, the security feeds gone. The entire mansion plunged into chaos. Adrian grabbed her wrist and dragged her toward the exit. "We need to move, now!" They stumbled through the hallway, smoke curling around them. Somewhere behind them, a second explosion tore through the east wing. By the time they reached the courtyard, the night was alive with sirens and flame. His men were shouting, disoriented, scattering into the darkness. Adrian turned toward the nursery windows just in time to see the roof collapse. Elena screamed, "The babies!" He held her back, voice breaking. "They're gone!" Her knees buckled. He caught her before she hit the ground, his own vision blurring from smoke and disbelief. For a long moment, they just stared at the burning mansion. Everything, every ounce of control, every wall he built, was gone in one breath. The flames roared louder, swallowing the night. Then his phone buzzed in his pocket. Through the smoke, he lifted it to his ear. A voice he hadn't heard in years spoke, low and calm. "You should have let her go, Adrian." The line went dead. Adrian's grip tightened around the phone until it cracked in his hand. He turned toward the burning house, jaw set, eyes cold. "Then I'm coming for you, Marcus." Behind him, Elena whispered through the smoke, voice trembling with grief, "They were never in the crib." Adrian froze. "What?" She looked up, tears cutting clean lines through the ash on her face. "He took them before the explosion." A faint sound echoed through the smoke. A baby's cry, distant but real, coming from somewhere beyond the burning gates. Adrian's head snapped toward it. The firelight flickered across his face, turning his eyes into cold steel. Without a word, he started walking into the dark. The flames had burned themselves into silence by morning. Smoke coiled through what was left of the safe house, twisting in the gray dawn like the ghosts of everything Adrian had failed to protect. Ash clung to his suit. Blood, someone's, maybe his own, dried on his hands. The mansion was nothing but charred bones now. The smell of burnt wood and iron heavy in the air. He stepped over collapsed beams and shattered glass, calling their names, once, twice, but the echo that came back was empty. "Elena!" No answer. His men combed through the wreckage behind him, moving fast but careful, too afraid to speak unless ordered. Every second stretched like wire pulled to the point of snapping. Vincent appeared out of the smoke, face streaked with ash. "We've checked every room," he said. "They're gone. I think Vance—" Adrian cut him off. "Don't think." "No." Vincent hesitated. For the first time, his voice faltered. "All signs point to Marcus. He wanted the twins. Maybe he—" "Don't say it." The words were low, sharp, enough to make Vincent step back. Adrian's jaw tightened as he turned away. The morning light caught in the shards of glass beneath his shoes, glittering like small pieces of guilt. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared at what used to be the nursery, smoke rising from the ruins like breath from a corpse. Then he said quietly, "Find me something. A car, a trail, a mistake, anything." Vincent nodded and disappeared into the smoke. Hours passed. The sky shifted from gray to silver to black again. Adrian hadn't moved from the edge of the debris. His coat hung open, soaked from the rain that refused to stop. The others came and went, reporting nothing. Every lead ended in ash. Every question met silence. Finally, Vincent returned, carrying a small tablet. "We pulled what was left of the security feed," he said, voice cautious. "It's corrupted, but I got something." Adrian turned slowly. "Show me." Vincent tapped the screen. Static. Then flickers of the safe house interior before the explosion. Hallways, the garage, the control room, and then, frame by frame, a figure entering from the west corridor. The timestamp matched minutes before the blast. The man wore a cap, hood pulled low, but Adrian knew that stance. The way he moved, quick, precise, familiar. "Pause it," Adrian ordered. Vincent froze the frame. The man reached into his pocket, pulling out a keycard. He handed it to another figure waiting in the dark. The second man's face was visible for just a second, clean-cut, wearing a suit, badge glinting on his belt. Government issue. Adrian leaned closer. His pulse slowed. "Zoom in." Vincent hesitated but obeyed. The screen magnified until the image blurred. The first man's face came into focus. Vincent. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the damaged tablet. Adrian's hand curled into a fist. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." Vincent's breath caught. "Boss, I can explain." "Explain what?" Adrian's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "That you were selling access to my house? To her? To my children?" Vincent took a step back. "It wasn't like that. You don't understand." "Then make me understand." Vincent swallowed hard. His voice cracked under the weight of guilt. "They came to me months ago. Government agents. Said they were investigating your network. I thought I could feed them nothing, buy time, keep you safe." Adrian's eyes hardened. "And what did they offer you, Vincent?" Vincent looked away. "Immunity." The word landed like a gunshot. Adrian exhaled slowly, his face unreadable. He walked closer, step by deliberate step. "You worked for me for 10 years. You've seen what loyalty costs. And this is how you pay it back?" Vincent's voice broke. "They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd take me down with you. I didn't know Marcus was part of it until last week. By then it was too late." "Too late for who?" Adrian asked softly. Vincent opened his mouth to answer, but stopped. His eyes widened slightly, as if he'd just realized something. "Wait, you shouldn't—" Adrian didn't let him finish. He grabbed Vincent by the collar and slammed him against the half-burnt wall. "You handed them a key. You gave them her location." Vincent didn't fight back. "I didn't know they'd take the kids, Adrian." "I swear to you." Adrian's grip tightened, then loosened. He stepped back, breathing hard. "Get out of my sight." Vincent hesitated. "Boss?" "Go before I forget how much you meant to me." Vincent's face twisted with regret. He turned and walked toward the gate, disappearing into the fog. Adrian stood there long after he was gone. Rain began again, soft at first, then heavier, until it drowned the sound of the wind. He looked down at the shattered tablet, still playing the final seconds of footage. Marcus Vance's reflection appeared in the corner of the screen, smiling faintly as he turned off the camera. Adrian smashed the tablet against the floor. He didn't sleep. Couldn't. He sat in the ruins of the control room, staring at the last unbroken screen, a single feed from the outside cameras, looping the same 10 seconds over and over. The mansion burned. The smoke rose. The past wouldn't die. And somewhere out there, Marcus Vance was holding everything Adrian ever cared about. By dawn, the storm had cleared. The sea beyond the property was calm again, eerily still. Adrian stood by the remains of the window, phone in hand, eyes bloodshot but sharp. He scrolled through old messages, through contacts that once built empires, until he found the number he hadn't called in years, an ally buried under layers of corruption and silence, someone who owed him a favor that could burn the world. He pressed the call button. "Moretti?" A voice answered on the second ring, low and familiar. "Didn't think I'd ever hear from you again." "I need eyes on Marcus Vance," Adrian said. "Every root, every shadow. He has something that belongs to me." The man on the line paused. "That's not what I heard." Adrian frowned. "What do you mean?" "I heard he has someone that belongs to him." The call ended before Adrian could answer. He lowered the phone slowly, the words replaying in his mind. Someone that belongs to him. Elena. He crossed the room to the desk, ready to call again, but then his phone buzzed once more. A notification flashed across the screen. "Incoming feed, unknown source." He opened it. The screen flickered. static washing over the image before it stabilized. A dim room, concrete walls, a single light bulb swinging overhead, and in the center, Elena. Her wrists were bound to a chair, her face bruised, her breathing shallow. She looked straight at the camera, straight at him. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then her lips moved, barely a whisper. "Don't come for me. It's a trap." The feed stuttered, cutting in and out, but not before another figure stepped briefly into frame. A man's silhouette, tall, precise, a silver ring catching the light. Marcus Vance. The screen went black. Adrian's reflection glared back at him from the phone's surface, eyes hollow, rage barely caged. He exhaled once, the sound almost a growl. "Trap or not," he murmured, "I'm coming." Outside the shattered safe house, the wind picked up, sweeping ash into the night. In the distance, headlights flared, 3 black SUVs pulling onto the road, heading in opposite directions. One of them carried Marcus Vance, one carried Elena, and one carried something far more dangerous, Adrian's bloodline. The game had just changed. The dock slept beneath a veil of fog, thick, suffocating, alive with secrets. The air smelled of salt, oil, and iron. Somewhere beyond the warehouses, a ship's horn moaned, distant and hollow, like a warning the night refused to hear. Adrian didn't wait for orders. He never did. He moved like a shadow through the mist, black coat flaring in the wind, boots silent against the wet concrete. Every step was measured, every heartbeat a countdown. He could still hear her voice. "Don't come for me, it's a trap." He ignored it. He had always ignored fear when it came to her. Behind him, 2 of his men kept their distance, weapons drawn, scanning the dark. Their breath steamed in the cold. They didn't speak. The silence around Adrian was heavier than the sea itself. The dock stretched before him, an endless maze of cranes and containers stacked like tombstones. Somewhere in that industrial graveyard, she was waiting. He stopped near a warehouse marked with peeling white letters, Pier 47. The place looked abandoned. It wasn't. He could feel it. The tension in the air was too sharp, too deliberate. He turned to his men. No noise, no hesitation. They nodded. Adrian drew his weapon. The metal was cold against his palm, but the feeling steadied him. He didn't think about what waited inside. He only thought about her, the woman who once believed he could be saved. The door groaned open. Darkness breathed out to meet them. Inside, the warehouse was a cathedral of decay. Rusted chains swung from the ceiling. Water dripped from broken pipes, echoing like a heartbeat. Adrian's flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing stacked crates, scattered tools, and drag marks across the concrete floor. Someone had been moved recently. He followed the trail. Every instinct screamed that he was walking straight into the trap she warned him about, but he couldn't stop. The idea of doing nothing was worse. A soft sound broke through the stillness. Not machinery, not footsteps. A whisper. "Elena?" The echo carried her name back to him like a ghost. He followed the sound, moving deeper into the maze of crates until the light fell on a figure tied to a chair at the center of the room. Her head hung forward, hair tangled, her skin marked by exhaustion. Elena. She stirred weakly as if surfacing from a dream. When her eyes found him, they widened, fear and relief tangled together. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. Adrian holstered his gun and knelt beside her. "You think I'd let you stay here?" Her lips trembled into something almost like a smile. "You never change." He started cutting the ropes. "Then let me prove you wrong." The final knot snapped. She slumped forward into his arms, barely conscious. The sound of footsteps echoed from the far end of the warehouse. Slow. Deliberate. Adrian froze. His men raised their weapons, scanning the shadows. A voice carried through the fog. Calm, amused, familiar. "I told you he wouldn't listen." Adrian's head snapped toward the sound. Marcus Vance stepped into the light, hands in his pockets, coat spotless despite the grime around him. He looked exactly as Adrian remembered. The same smirk, the same composure. The kind of man who could walk through hell and come out untouched. Marcus. Adrian. The name rolled off his tongue like an old joke. You really should have stayed out of this. Adrian stood, placing Elena gently behind him. You've taken enough from me. Marcus tilted his head. You always talk about what's yours. The empire, the power, her. But tell me, Adrian, what's left when the world stops being afraid of you? Adrian raised his gun. We can find out right now. Marcus smiled. You think this is a gunfight? You're already too late. Before Adrian could respond, the lights above them flickered. Then came the sound of sirens in the distance. Growing louder, closer. Adrian's eyes narrowed. You called them. Marcus shrugged. No, you did. And then he was gone, vanished into the fog like a memory. Adrian cursed under his breath. He grabbed Elena and pulled her toward the exit as the first red and blue lights splashed across the walls. Move! They slipped through a side door, sprinting across the slick pavement. Rain started to fall again, washing away the smoke from the explosion that had brought him here. Behind them, engines roared to life. Government SUVs pulling in, their tires hissing against the wet ground. Adrian and Elena reached the edge of the dock. He scanned the shadows until he saw it. A small boat moored beneath an old crane, its engine running. Vincent had followed orders. For once, something had gone right. Adrian helped Elena aboard, ducked as bullets ricocheted off the steel around them, and shouted, Hold on! He took the wheel, slamming the throttle forward. The boat lurched into the black water, slicing through the fog. Sirens wailed behind them, fading with distance. Elena clung to the side rail, breathing hard. You shouldn't have come, she said again, voice breaking. Adrian glanced at her. If I hadn't, you'd be dead. Or maybe you would have been free, she whispered. He didn't answer. The water stretched endlessly ahead, dark and restless. Minutes passed before she spoke again. You don't even know what you've walked into. Then tell me, he said, eyes fixed on the horizon. She hesitated. Marcus isn't working alone. There's someone else, someone higher. He's just a piece on their board. Adrian's grip tightened on the throttle. And what do they want? She looked away. You already know. He didn't. Not fully, but he could guess. Power, leverage, blood. He cut the engine once they were far enough from shore. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. Elena leaned back, shivering. Her eyes closed briefly, then opened again. The twins, she whispered. Where are they? Adrian's breath caught. They're safe, he lied automatically. She stared at him. Don't. He couldn't meet her eyes. The truth was worse than any wound. He didn't know. She looked out over the water, voice barely audible. I heard them crying before the explosion, and then nothing. Marcus said he was taking them somewhere no one could reach. Adrian's jaw locked. Then I'll find them. Elena turned to him. At what cost this time? He didn't answer. His silence was enough. She looked down, tears slipping silently into the dark sea below. You can't fight ghosts, Adrian. He started the engine again. Watch me. The coastline came into view ahead. A series of cliffs and abandoned factories along the industrial stretch of Long Island. A good place to disappear, a better place to start hunting. He guided the boat into an old docking bay beneath a bridge. His men were waiting, 3 of them, armed and tense. One stepped forward. We thought you were dead. Not yet, Adrian said, helping Elena onto the dock. She swayed on her feet. He steadied her without a word. For a moment their eyes met, everything broken between them still flickering beneath the surface. He wanted to tell her that he'd fix it all, that he'd find the twins, that Marcus would pay. But the words felt empty, and he'd lied enough for one lifetime. Instead, he said, "You need rest." Elena shook her head. "No, I need the truth." He opened his mouth, but then his phone buzzed. The vibration was sharp, jarring. He pulled it out, frowning at the unknown number flashing across the screen. He answered, "Who is this?" Static filled his ear. Then a voice, small, broken, unmistakable. "Daddy." His breath stopped. "Help us." Then silence. Adrian's blood ran cold. "Trace it," he ordered, tossing the phone to one of his men. They worked fast. Within seconds, the coordinates appeared. Somewhere inland. Elena stared at the screen. "That's not far from the city." Adrian's mind raced. "They're still alive." But as the realization hit, another message appeared. An image this time. A room, 2 small cribs, a clock on the wall ticking down. 0:59:43, a 1-hour timer. Elena's voice broke. "What is that?" Adrian's eyes went dark. "A warning." He pocketed the phone, turned to his men, and barked, "Get the cars ready. We move now." The engine roared to life. Tires screeched. Adrian climbed into the lead vehicle, Elena beside him. The clock on the phone kept counting down. 59 minutes. He looked out the window as the city lights grew closer. The night seemed to close around them, tighter with every passing second. Elena whispered, "What if we're too late?" Adrian's voice was cold steel. "Then they'll learn what too late means." The car sped through the darkness, the timer glowing on the dashboard between them. The countdown hit 41 hours when Adrian's phone vibrated again. Another message appeared, this one from Marcus himself. "Trade offer, Adrian, your empire for your bloodline." A live feed attached below, 2 tiny hearts beating on a monitor. Adrian's knuckles whitened around the phone. He whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. He just declared war. The safe house felt wrong the moment Adrian stepped through the door. Too still, too clean. The kind of silence that doesn't rest. It watches. His shoes left faint prints across the marble floor, wet from the storm outside. A single lamp flickered in the corner, throwing long shadows that crawled across the walls like restless ghosts. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. Elena followed, her face pale, eyes darting to every doorway as if she expected the walls themselves to turn against her. The air smelled of smoke and antiseptic, a strange clinical emptiness. Something had been erased here. Adrian reached the nursery first. The door was ajar. He pushed it open. The sound that left him wasn't human. Cribs overturned, drawers ripped out, curtains fluttering in the draft of a broken window. Only a single object lay untouched in the chaos. A small folded blanket on the floor. Pale blue, soft, familiar. He froze. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that piece of fabric. He walked toward it slowly, like a man approaching his own grave. His knees hit the floor. His hands trembled as he picked it up. The faint scent of milk and baby powder still clung to the threads. Nothing else remained. Behind him, Elena stopped in the doorway. Her breath caught. She didn't speak. The look on his face said everything. Adrian stared at the empty crib, eyes hollow. It was as if the last fragile thing holding him to humanity had been stolen in the night. His chest tightened until he couldn't breathe. He pressed the blanket to his face, forcing back the roar in his throat. "Adrian." Elena started softly. But the word broke under the weight between them. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Minutes stretched, heavy and merciless. Rain beat against the windows like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Elena crossed the room, knelt beside him, and placed a shaking hand on his shoulder. "For years," she whispered, "I hated the man you were." He looked at her, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, guilt burning beneath the surface. "But right now," she continued, her voice cracking, "I just need the man who's their father." Adrian's fingers clenched around the blanket. The Mafia boss, the empire builder, the feared name whispered in alleys. All of it seemed distant. What remained was a father staring into the void where his children should have been. He swallowed hard. I promised I'd protect them. Elena's gaze softened. Then keep that promise. He wanted to tell her he didn't know how anymore, that every choice he'd made had led here, to emptiness. But before the words could form, his phone vibrated on the floor beside him. He ignored it. Elena reached for it. Maybe, don't. His voice was low, raw. She hesitated, then glanced back at the cribs. The tiny mobile still turning above them, playing its broken lullaby. The haunting tune echoed through the room, mocking in its sweetness. Adrian stood, shoulders rigid. Lock every exit. I want the perimeter sealed. His men moved instantly. The sound of boots filled the hallways, orders whispered into radios. But deep down, he knew it was already too late. Whoever had taken them was gone hours ago. This wasn't an act of desperation. It was precision. He looked at the shattered window. No footprints, no forced entry. They hadn't broken in. Someone had let them in. His mind flashed to Vincent. The betrayal, the keycard, the quiet hesitation in his eyes. Adrian's jaw tightened. He sold me out once, maybe twice. Elena turned toward him. You think he... I don't think, he said coldly. I know. She stepped closer. And if you're wrong, then he's already dead. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. Adrian took a slow breath, forcing control back into his voice. They want something. Otherwise, they'd be gone completely. Elena looked at the blanket still clutched in his hand. Then what's this? He opened it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then faint light flickered from inside the fabric. A small device barely the size of a coin embedded in the threads. A message. He pressed it once. The blanket glowed, projecting words into the dim room. Trade your empire for your bloodline. Elena gasped. No. Adrian stared at the message. Every muscle in his body coiled. It wasn't just a ransom. It was humiliation. Someone reminding him how powerless he'd become. Elena's voice shook. You can't give them everything. That's suicide. He turned to her slowly, eyes darker than the storm outside. If that's the price to bring them home, I'll pay it. You don't mean that. I do. You'll burn the whole city for them. Then the city burns. For the first time, she saw him not as the crime lord or the monster she'd run from, but as a man stripped bare. Everything he'd ever built was nothing compared to what had been taken. Thunder rolled across the horizon. The lights in the safe house flickered, once, twice, then went dark. Elena's breath caught. What now? Adrian turned toward the window. Through the glass, he saw headlights appear at the edge of the forest. 2, then 4, then 6. Engines idled. Figures stepped out, silhouettes against the rain. He moved to the crib, gently setting the blanket down, the glowing words still pulsing across its fabric. Get down, he whispered. Elena obeyed, ducking behind the dresser as he drew his gun. Outside, the rain fell harder, masking the sound of approaching footsteps. He could see them now. Armed men moving in formation, quiet, efficient. Not Marcus's usual chaos. This was something new. Elena's whisper cut through the dark. Who are they? Adrian's eyes never left the window. Whoever they are, they're not here to talk. He waited, counting the shadows, mapping their approach in his head. Then, a crash from downstairs. The front door gave way. Gunfire tore through the silence. Adrian moved fast, pulling Elena toward the back hall. Stay close! Bullets splintered the walls behind them. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. He returned fire once, twice, covering their retreat. They made it to the narrow staircase leading to the cellar. He pushed her down the steps first. Go! She stumbled but didn't argue. As she reached the bottom, another explosion shook the house. Smaller than before, but close enough to send dust raining from the ceiling. Adrian jumped the last few steps, slamming the steel door shut behind them. The basement lights flickered to life, backup power. He leaned against the door, catching his breath. Elena turned to him. "What now?" He straightened, wiped the blood from his cheek. "Now we find out who wants to collect." The sound of footsteps echoed above them, steady, deliberate. Whoever was up there wasn't rushing. They were searching. Elena gripped his arm. "Adrian." He met her eyes. "They won't find what they came for." From somewhere in the dark, a small light blinked. The device in the blanket still glowing upstairs, broadcasting. He realized too late. "They're not searching," he whispered. "They're tracking." The explosion hit before she could answer. The shock wave ripped through the cellar, throwing them both to the ground. Dust and smoke filled the air. The ceiling groaned, fragments of wood and stone collapsing. Adrian pushed himself up, coughing. "Elena!" She coughed weakly beside him, half buried under debris. He pulled her free, dragging her toward the far wall. The building was collapsing around them. He slammed his fist against the reinforced exit hatch, locked from the outside. No way out. Elena gripped his sleeve. "Adrian, look!" Through the haze, he saw it. A figure standing in the breach above, backlit by flames. Tall, composed, face hidden by the glare. But the voice that followed chilled the air. "Decide fast, Moretti. The longer you hesitate, the smaller your world gets." Adrian's eyes widened. He knew that voice. The figure dropped something into the smoke. A phone. It landed at his feet, screen already flashing a live feed of 2 tiny cribs and the ticking clock above them. Duo 10, Seo. Elena's voice trembled. 10 minutes! Adrian looked up at the burning ceiling, fury tightening every line of his face. "Then I'll end this in 9. The flames roared higher, swallowing the last of the safe house. Adrian grabbed the phone, the ticking countdown reflected in his eyes. Outside, engines revved. Whoever came for him wasn't finished. The clock hit 09:37. He whispered, "You want my empire?" He chambered around. "Come take it." The city slept beneath thunder. Every tower, every alley, every shadow whispered his name, Moretti. Once a symbol of fear, now a ghost dismantling his own kingdom. Adrian watched the empire fall piece by piece. One call to his bankers, one message to his lieutenants, one coded signal that sent millions vanishing into the void. By dawn, everything he had built through blood and fire was dust. He stood in his office for the last time. No guards, no power, no safety net. Just silence and the faint echo of rain tapping the glass. His phone buzzed. A single message. Midnight. Cathedral of St. Verena. Come alone. Attached was a photo. 2 cribs, 2 tiny shapes. Alive. He didn't hesitate. The cathedral loomed over the ruins of an old district, half swallowed by ivy and time. Its stained glass was cracked, its bell long dead. Yet the air still hummed with something ancient. Faith, fear, or maybe both. Adrian stepped inside, boots echoing against the marble floor. His breath fogged in the cold air. The vast emptiness of the church stretched before him. Pews overturned, candles long extinguished. At the altar, a single man stood in the dim light filtering through shattered glass. Marcus Vance. He looked almost holy in the ruin. Black coat, hands clasped behind his back, a faint smile curving his lips. "So the king comes to die," Marcus said softly. Adrian kept walking, each step deliberate. "You wanted everything I had. You've got it." Marcus arched a brow. "Everything?" "My accounts, my territories, my name. It's all gone. You win." Marcus chuckled, low, disbelieving. "You think I care about your empire, Adrian? That was just bait. I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become when the crown was gone." Adrian stopped at the foot of the altar. "Now you've seen it. Let them go." Marcus's gaze sharpened. You really think you deserve mercy? No, Adrian said quietly. I'm not asking for mercy. I'm asking for them. He reached into his coat and tossed a small metal drive onto the steps between them. Everything I have left, every secret, every offshore link, every key to what's left of my world. It's yours. Marcus's smile faded. And what about you? Adrian dropped to his knees. Take me. Just let them live. The sound echoed through the cathedral, the fall of a man who'd never bowed to anyone. Marcus watched him for a long moment, head tilted, expression unreadable. You know, I always envied you, he said finally. The world bent around your name. People trembled when you entered a room. But I see now. You were just a man hiding behind myth. Adrian met his gaze. And you're still hiding behind lies. Marcus's smile returned, thin and venomous. Maybe. But unlike you, I know what I am. He drew his gun. The sound of metal against leather filled the silence like a confession. Adrian didn't flinch. If you're going to do it, make it clean. Marcus aimed. Redemption isn't a currency I accept. The words were a whisper before the gunfire cracked through the night. The echo rolled across the cathedral, shattering the silence, scattering dust from the rafters. Marcus froze. A red bloom spread across his chest. His eyes widened, not in pain but disbelief. He turned slowly, as if refusing to believe it wasn't Adrian who'd pulled the trigger. Behind him stood Elena, hair disheveled, hands trembling, the gun still smoking in her grip. Marcus, she whispered, voice breaking. You should have stayed dead. He staggered backward, eyes filled with something that almost looked like pity. Still saving monsters, he murmured. Some habits never die. Then he fell. The thud echoed like a closing chapter. Elena's hands shook. The gun slipped from her fingers, clattering across the marble. Adrian caught her before she could fall with it. You shouldn't have come, he said, his voice low, rough, almost tender. Her eyes met his, haunted, raw. I couldn't let you die for my mistake. He froze. Your mistake? She nodded, tears streaking through the dirt on her cheeks. It wasn't Marcus who sold you out. His blood ran cold. What are you saying? Elena swallowed hard. It was me. For a moment, the world stopped. The cathedral seemed to shrink around them, the air turning to ice. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Why? Her voice trembled. They promised the twins would be safe. They said if I helped them find you, they'd let them go. He stepped back just enough that her hand fell from his chest. You lied to me. I had no choice, she cried. They had our children. The words cut deeper than bullets ever could. Adrian turned away, his face unreadable in the flickering candlelight. And now? They're still out there, she said softly. Marcus wasn't the one pulling the strings. He was just another pawn. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Then who? She hesitated. He called himself the broker. He's been behind everything. Marcus, the government agents, the attacks. He owns everyone. Adrian looked down at Marcus's body, the blood pooling like a shadow spreading across the stone floor. So the real devil finally shows his face, he muttered. Elena wiped her eyes. We have to go, before his men come back. Adrian's gaze drifted to the fallen flash drive, glinting under the candlelight. He picked it up, sliding it into his pocket. No, he said quietly. We finish this. Elena stared at him, fear creeping into her voice. You can't fight him alone. He turned, meeting her eyes. You think I have anything left to lose? Lightning flashed through the broken stained glass, painting him in fragments of red and gold. The image looked almost divine, or damned. Elena took a step closer. If you keep going down this road, you'll never come back. He didn't blink. Then I won't. The distant sound of engines echoed through the night, growing louder, closing in. Elena's eyes widened. They're coming. Adrian glanced toward the front doors. Two massive slabs of rotted oak, trembling under the weight of approaching footsteps. He reached for his gun. "Get behind me!" She hesitated. "Adrian!" "Now." She obeyed. The cathedral's doors burst open, wind howling through the entryway. Dozens of figures moved in the darkness beyond, their silhouettes shifting through fog and rain. Adrian took one last look at Marcus's body, then at Elena. "If this is the end," he said, "at least it's honest." She looked at him, eyes shining. "You're still the man I loved once." He gave a ghost of a smile. "Then maybe that's enough." Gunfire erupted. The first shots tore through the pews, splintering wood, scattering shards of stained glass. Adrian returned fire, his movements precise, mechanical, the instincts of a man who'd lived too long in war. Elena grabbed the fallen weapon beside her, covering his flank. The air filled with smoke and echoes of chaos. Bodies fell. The candles blew out. The cathedral became a battlefield. When the last echo faded, the only sound left was rain dripping through the shattered roof. Adrian lowered his weapon slowly. Elena stood across the aisle, breathing hard. Her hair clung to her face, her hands still shaking. "We have to leave," she said. Adrian nodded once, but as they turned toward the side exit, a low hum filled the air. A phone, Marcus's, vibrating against the stone floor. Adrian hesitated, then picked it up. The screen lit with a message. "Trade incomplete." A second later, another message. "The twins are still mine." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "No." Adrian's expression hardened into something unrecognizable. Fury sharpened into focus. He closed the phone slowly, his voice quiet, final. "Then the trade's not over." Lightning tore through the sky above the cathedral as Adrian turned toward the door. Soaked in blood and rain, somewhere beyond the storm, a new voice whispered through his phone speaker, calm, controlled, and unmistakably smug. "Welcome back to the game, Mr. Moretti." Adrian's eyes went cold. He whispered into the dark, "Then let's finish it." The world had gone quiet. For the first time in years, there were no phone calls, no orders, no footsteps echoing down marble halls. Just the steady ticking of a cheap clock and the soft coo of newborns somewhere in the corner of a weathered farmhouse. Adrian Moretti opened his eyes to a ceiling stained with age and smoke. The sheets beneath him were rough, smelling faintly of pine and rain. His body ached in places he didn't know could still hurt. He reached for the nightstand out of habit. No gun, no phone, no power, just stillness. Outside, the wind brushed through the wheat fields, whispering against the cracked glass. He hadn't seen the sun in weeks, maybe months. The world had kept spinning without him, and for once he hadn't tried to stop it. A figure sat by the window, Elena. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands falling against her cheek. The light touched her in pieces, painting her in gold and shadow. She held both twins close to her chest, humming softly, the kind of melody that made his chest tighten with something dangerously close to peace. He pushed himself up, ignoring the dull throb in his ribs. "Elena!" he rasped, his voice breaking like glass. She didn't turn. "You shouldn't be moving." "I shouldn't be alive," he muttered, pulling himself to the edge of the bed. "But here we are." Silence stretched between them. Only the faint creak of the old house filled it. He stood, every step heavy with unspoken words. The man who once ruled cities now hesitated in his own shadow. He'd faced enemies, betrayals, wars. But not this woman, not her quiet judgment. When he finally reached her, he saw it. The softness in her eyes warred with the walls she'd built around her heart. He exhaled, barely a whisper. "After everything I've done, why save me?" Her fingers tightened on the twins. She didn't look at him. "Because even monsters deserve one chance to be fathers." The words hit harder than bullets. He sank to his knees beside her, his reflection flickering in the window's dirty glass. The twins slept, unaware of the ghosts that haunted their parents. He looked at them, then at her, the weight of a lifetime pressing on his chest. "I don't know how to be anything else," he said, his voice breaking. "Then start by being human," she replied. He wanted to believe it was that simple. The world outside seemed to hold its breath. The air carried the scent of rain and burned wood. A storm was coming. He could feel it. It always found him. He reached toward the crib beside her, brushing his fingers over the soft blanket. It felt unreal, fragile. Life had always been a transaction for him. Power traded for loyalty, loyalty for blood. But this was something he couldn't buy, couldn't threaten, couldn't rebuild. Elena finally looked at him. There was no forgiveness there, not yet, but there was a flicker of something that hadn't existed between them in years. Understanding. "You think walking away erases what you did?" she asked. "No," he said. "But maybe it stops me from becoming worse." She studied him, searching for lies. For once he had none left to give. A log cracked in the fireplace, scattering ash into the air. It drifted around them like snow. Beautiful, but born from ruin. Adrian leaned against the wall, staring into the flames. "Marcus is gone," he said quietly. "The Empire's gone. Everything I built turned to dust." "Maybe that's what it needed to do," Elena said. "Burn, so something else could grow." He almost laughed. "You sound like you still believe in me." "I don't," she said softly. "I believe in them." Her gaze dropped to the twins. They deserve a father who knows how to love without destroying everything he touches. Adrian's throat tightened. "Then I'll learn." "You'll try," she corrected. "Learning takes more than promises." He nodded, the firelight reflecting in his tired eyes. For the first time, he wasn't sure if he could keep his word, but he wanted to. That was new. The twins stirred, tiny hands curling in the air. Elena hummed again, and Adrian found himself listening like it was the first sound he'd ever heard. He looked at her, really looked, at the scars, the weariness, the strength she never lost. The woman he once owned, now the woman who owed him nothing. "Elena," he said softly, "you could have left me to die." "I tried," she said, "but you wouldn't let go." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Rain began to tap against the window. Outside, the world blurred into gray. The farmhouse creaked under the weight of the storm. For a moment, everything was still, just the four of them, suspended in something fragile and fleeting. Then the sound came. Tires. Distant, low, crunching against gravel. Adrian's body tensed instantly. The instincts he'd buried came clawing back to life. He moved to the window, parting the curtain with 2 fingers. Headlights. A single black car. It rolled to a stop at the edge of the dirt road, its engine humming like a threat held in patience. Elena felt the air shift. "Adrian." He didn't answer. His eyes locked on the silhouette inside the car. One figure, motionless, watching the farmhouse. No badge, no insignia, just a shadow. Elena rose, clutching the twins tighter. "Who is it?" "I don't know," he said, voice low. "But they found us." The car engine cut off. Silence swallowed the night again. Adrian turned, crossing the room in 3 strides. "Take them to the cellar," he said. "Adrian, now." The tone left no argument. The same steel she used to hate now became her safety net. He reached for the drawer near the table. His hand found what he was looking for. Not a weapon this time, but a single folded photograph. The last picture of his old crew. Vincent, Marcus, him. All smiling before the world rotted them from the inside. He slid the photo into his pocket and exhaled. If this is how it ends. He glanced toward Elena and the twins disappearing down the stairs. Then let it end here. Outside, the car door opened with a slow metallic creak. A figure stepped out, umbrella in hand. Rain rolled down the black coat, blurring the face behind it. Adrian stepped onto the porch, the storm swallowing him whole. The stranger stopped halfway up the path. "Mr. Moretti," a voice called through the rain, calm and precise. "You've been hard to find." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "That's because I wasn't looking to be found." The stranger smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "You should have known better. The past doesn't bury easy." Lightning flashed. For a second, Adrian saw the glint of something metallic under the coat. Too deliberate to be a mistake. He straightened, jaw tightening. "If you came to kill me, do it outside. My kids are sleeping." The stranger tilted their head. "Who said we came for you?" A chill ran through him, deeper than the rain. "What do you mean?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, a small device blinked red in their hand, a tracker. Adrian's heart stopped. He looked back toward the window, toward the faint outline of Elena in the doorway, holding the twins. Too late. The red light pulsed faster. Boom. The screen door ripped from its hinges, the ground shaking under the shockwave. Fire swallowed the night in an instant. And as the flames tore through the rain, Adrian's voice echoed over the chaos, raw, desperate, and furious. "Elena!" Through the smoke, the black car reversed, tires spinning in mud, disappearing into the darkness. The farmhouse stood half-consumed, burning against the storm, and somewhere inside, over the crackle of fire and the cries of newborns, a new sound cut through, mechanical, faint, and deliberate. A phone buzzing from under the debris. On its cracked screen, a single message blinked in white letters. It was never over. Moretti. Adrian stares at the burning remains of his past as the rain begins to fall again, washing blood and ash into the earth. The empire may be gone, but something far worse has just found him. The rain had never stopped. It fell in slow sheets, whispering against the roof of the old farmhouse. The fields beyond stretched into fog, an ocean of gray that swallowed everything. Adrian stood on the porch, coat clinging to his shoulders, head bowed. Smoke still lingered in the air. The ghost of the fire that tried to erase him. His reflection shimmered in the puddles forming at his boots. A man reborn, or maybe just one too stubborn to die. He'd spent years controlling the city, bending it to his will. Every street, every life, every deal. All threads in his web. Now, for the first time, he was standing in silence. No power, no fear. Just consequence. Behind him, the faint sound of laughter drifted through the open door. Elena's voice, the baby's soft giggles, a melody of peace he'd once believed was impossible. It almost made him believe in redemption. Almost. Then the sound of an engine broke the illusion. Adrian's head lifted slowly. A black car pulled up on the dirt road, headlights cutting through the fog. The hum was low, confident, not a threat, but a reminder. He stepped down from the porch, boots crunching on wet gravel. The air was thick with rain and tension. The car door opened. A man stepped out, tall, dressed in a dark overcoat that clung to his frame. Time had aged him, but not softened him. A familiar face. One carved from loyalty and blood. "Adrian," the man greeted, voice gravel deep. "Didn't think I'd find you here." Adrian said nothing. His eyes traced the figure, recognition dawning like a wound reopening. "Luca." The man smiled faintly. "You've been gone too long." Adrian's jaw tightened. That was the point. Luca stepped closer, rain dripping from his hair. "New York's rotting without you. Every street's fighting for scraps. The families are turning on each other. They want you back." The words hit him like an echo of a life he'd buried. New York, the empire, the throne built on bones. He exhaled through his nose. "That city was my curse. I gave it everything. It gave me nothing back." "Don't lie to yourself," Luca said quietly. "You loved it, the power, the control. The fear. You were born for it. Adrian's gaze flicked toward the farmhouse, the dim light spilling through the doorway, the silhouette of Elena holding one of the twins. His world now. Fragile. Human. Real. He turned back to Luca. I'm done ruling graves. Luca's expression hardened. You can't just walk away, boss. Men are dying in your name. The vultures are circling. You leave that seat empty, someone worse will take it. Then let them, Adrian said. His tone was steady, final. Let someone else wear the crown. Luca studied him for a long moment. Rain pattered on the brim of his coat, thunder rolling far off in the distance. You always did think you could outlive the blood, Luca murmured, but you can't. It's in you. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. I buried that man, Luca. Let him stay dead. Luca's jaw flexed. Then tell me something. Why do you still sound like him? The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the rain. Adrian turned away. Go back to the city. Tell them Adrian Moretti doesn't exist anymore. Luca gave a humorless chuckle. You think they'll believe that? No, Adrian said, glancing over his shoulder. That's why they'll come. The two men locked eyes. Brothers once, now separated by the cost of power. Luca finally nodded, retreating toward the car. When they do come, I won't be able to stop them. I don't expect you to, Adrian said. Luca hesitated, then opened the car door. Take care of her, he said softly. She's the only thing you ever did right. Adrian didn't answer. He just watched as the car reversed slowly, tires spitting mud, headlights vanishing into the rain. When the sound faded, only the storm remained. He stood there for a long moment, the wind tugging at his coat. The rain soaked through his shirt, cold against his skin, grounding him. Finally, he turned back toward the farmhouse. Warm light spilled through the doorway, flickering against the dark. He stepped inside. The air smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Elena sat near the fire, one twin asleep in her arms, the other in a crib beside her. She looked up as he entered, her eyes soft but wary. Who was it? She asked. No one, he said. Just a reminder. She frowned. Of what? He knelt beside her, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. That piece doesn't last forever. Elena's lips parted, but she didn't speak. There was nothing to say. They both knew it was true. He reached into the crib, his fingers tracing the tiny hand of his son. The baby stirred, grasping his finger. Adrian smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Do you ever think it's possible? He asked quietly. What? To change who we are. Elena studied him for a moment. I think we can try, she said softly, but some parts don't go away. They just wait. He nodded slowly, staring at the fire. The flames danced in his reflection. Flickers of the man he used to be, the one the world still feared. He whispered, almost to himself, My empire ends here. Elena's hand found his, then let it. Outside, thunder rolled again, the kind that shakes the ground before the sky breaks open. Adrian's phone buzzed on the table, once, twice. He ignored it. The third vibration didn't stop. With a sigh, he stood, walking to the table. The screen lit up. Unknown number. He hesitated. Then he answered. Static. Then a voice. Distorted. Low. Familiar. You really thought you could walk away, Moretti? Adrian froze. The voice continued. Calm and mocking. We buried the wrong man in that fire. The line went dead. The room seemed to shrink. Elena looked up, sensing the shift in his expression. Who was it? She asked again. Adrian stared at the phone, knuckles white. A ghost, he whispered. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, carrying the faint sound of sirens in the distance. He turned toward the window. Red and blue lights shimmered faintly through the fog, still far but getting closer. Elena stood, clutching the twins. Adrian. He moved to her side, eyes locked on the horizon. It's starting again. She shook her head, fear breaking through her calm. We can run. No, he said, voice low and certain. This time we face it. The sirens grew louder, the storm thickened. Adrian took one last look at his family, the only truth he'd ever found, and stepped toward the door. Outside, the rain fell harder, the wind screaming through the night. He walked onto the porch, the storm swallowing him whole. Behind him, the phone on the table lit up again, a new message glowing bright in the dark. You can't walk away from who you are, Moretti. The screen flickered once and went black. The camera pulls back through the rain, rising above the farmhouse. The lights of police cars cut through the fog below, surrounding the field. In the center of it all, Adrian Moretti stands alone in the storm. Unarmed, unbroken, waiting for fate to decide whether he dies a father or is reborn a king.